let's go ahead and get started since that took a few minutes of our time. And let's jump right in. So I originally wanted to, for this first time together, this first webinar, do module one, kind of the first lesson that I would normally do with clients of mine once I had done kind of a consultation and assessment with them. But I realized that for a group like this, it's probably best to back up just a little bit and start with something that comes even before that. And that is, and I'll move this along. Oh, that's not it. That is why we need to master our emotional health in the first place. Okay, so today that's kind of what I'm going to show is why this is so important. And you'll see why it's so important and why that importance has not been there in the past. And it will all make a little bit more sense. And then we'll really be ready to get started on the first tools next time we meet. In fact, we'll kind of touch on the first tool at the end of today. But anyway, I was actually just going to introduce myself a little bit real quick for those who don't know me as well, hence the picture of my family. This is my family. I have 5 children. That's my husband. We've been married for 24 years. And I purposely picked this picture that we're all like happy and hugging and all close together, just because it kind of shows that ideal that we see on social media. We see, this is what we think of when we see other people's pictures, right? We just think of happy and like they're all great. And so I purposely show this one because the truth is, I love my family and we have a lot of great moments, but this type of moment never happens other than in a picture, right? We're not all standing together, happy with each other, lovey and all that all the time, not even close. And we have problems just like everybody else. In fact, I always like to be very open and let my my clients know right away that I understand emotional and life challenges. I won't go into detail right now. I'd be happy to share kind of my entire journey into coaching at a later date if people are interested in that. But for the moment, I will just say that I personally have chemical depression and premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD, which is sometimes referred to as hormonal or reproductive depression. And we have challenges in my family. Different individuals have their different problems. I grew up in a house with mental illness from my mother. And so when I come to you with these tools and with this information, I am telling you that despite struggles, despite what you have going on, for me personally, this information changed my life. It doesn't fix everything. It doesn't make life just wonderful all the time, but it absolutely changed my life. And I just want to make sure people are aware of that sometimes it might seem trivial what we're going to talk about in the beginning, but it is not. So stick with it because it genuinely can be life-changing. Almost always is. I've actually never seen it not be for someone. All right, so we're a little bit crazy. Just one more thing about the family. We're a little bit crazy. And in 2017, my husband left the corporate world and we decided to become entrepreneurs and small business owners. So we started a home care agency. And within months, a few months later, 2018, we opened a salad restaurant. My daughter's probably not going to love that I have that picture on here, but my kids were much younger then. And then we couldn't stop there. And so in 2021, we started an air duct restoration company. And all these have stories behind them for sure. We didn't just wake up one day and say, let's do this. And then this last several months, we have started a pool purification company. It's reverse osmosis for pools. So I have a busy life. We're pretty crazy, 5 kids and all these businesses. And I love small business. It's very busy and it's an adventure and lots of challenges, but I love it. And I do a lot of content creation and marketing and all these different things for those businesses. But my passion, what I love to do because it changes people's lives, is coaching. Coaching is my favorite thing to do. I would be more than happy not to touch the rest of the businesses, the rest of my life and just coach because of how I get the privilege of watching people, watching their eyes open and watching them implement these skills to make their lives better. All right. So let's jump into the intro. Why master emotional health? And I'm going to quick drink so I don't sound like all thirsty through my mic with you. Hopefully, my sound's still good. Before we go into the slides, maybe somebody can let me know. Sound good, picture good, you can see the slides. And definitely let me know if there's interest in hearing more about how I came into coaching. And of course, part of it is coming through challenges with mental illness and things like that. So if people have interest in that, definitely let me know. Okay, I'm hearing that we're good. So we're going to go ahead. So again, today we're going to just have an intro and we're going to start out talking about why master emotional health. Why take the time? You're here today taking your time, or some individuals are going to take time later and watch the recording, but you're taking time out of your life to learn about emotional health, to learn how to master it. And why do that? Well, it is so important. And that's a message that I'm trying to get out to the rest of the world. Emotional health is not just something that's really nice. And if you have time, no, it's absolutely essential if you want to live your best life. If you don't want to make life harder than it needs to be, you need to have the emotional skill set. All right. So, why? Because it affects everything in life, every single thing. And we like to pretend like that's not true, but it just is. It definitely affects our physical health, and we'll talk about that a tiny bit today. Affects for sure our relationship health, our relationships romantically, or with our children, or with friends, family, even the person down the street. It affects our work health, our professional health, our business health, and it affects our spiritual health and any other type of health you can think of, any other aspect of your life. Emotional health factors into that. It just does. And even though that's the case, the flip side to that is that we were not designed to be emotionally healthy by default. That wasn't really part of our design. And again, that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So even though it's so important, we weren't naturally necessarily created for it. It's kind of more of a learned thing. But most of us did grow up, or at least I did. I grew up thinking that the brain and the body should just instinctively know how to be emotionally healthy. Like if you were, just a pretty healthy person, if you were, not a strong person, maybe not a really weak person, and of course I'm using these terms that I don't agree with at all anymore, but that you would just know how to be healthy emotionally. Like it would just come to you. Well, we were wrong. That is absolutely not the case. Okay. Um, just as physical strength, like, people who are just naturally really strong, or good health, the people who just seem like they hardly ever have a health challenge, just like those things come more naturally to some people and others. And we all see this with our friends and with our acquaintances. There are factors, genetic, physiological, environmental, which would be like the home you grew up in, et cetera. There are factors that do affect an individual's level of emotional health, right? There are just things that maybe genetically are inside of you, physiologically inside of you, that you just learn from observing a parent, maybe with really good emotional health, that they just sort of had that and it was passed down from generation to generation without them even realizing what was happening. That is the case. But when it comes down to it, emotional health really at its foundation, and for the great majority of us, does not come naturally. In fact, it's just a skill set. Okay. So, and it's something that most of us were never taught. All right. And when I first learned that, I was like, "Oh, that's so sad. Like, we weren't taught it. Like, we should have been taught it." Well, the truth is, there's a reason that we were not taught the skills of emotional health. And that's because for most of our history as a world and a society, we haven't valued, because we haven't understood the impact of emotional health on all aspects of our life. The truth is, no one knew. People didn't know better, right? And why didn't they know better? Well, because for centuries we were too preoccupied. We were way too busy to worry about things like emotions or living better or thriving in life. We were way too busy. We were trying to make sure we had food to eat, that we didn't die from, some little infection, all these different things that we had a safe shelter from outside the elements and predators. That's what we were worried about. And we needed to be, right? We didn't have time to think about emotions and being emotionally healthy. And so even though sometimes, it's like, "Ah, I wish we could have just had this years ago or throughout our entire lives or throughout our human history," it just was never going to be the case. And that's okay. Our focus was only survival. Like I said, can we get food? Can we not die today from a health issue or from, you know, um, freezing to death because we don't have proper shelter? All those different types of things. And the interesting thing about that is survival. Remember, we were not designed for to be emotionally healthy, for emotional health. What we were designed for and engineered for was survival. We were designed to survive. And that's pretty much all that, our midbrain, primitive brain, I won't go into that today, wants to accomplish. It just wants to keep us alive. But as society has progressed and our challenges and concerns have changed dramatically from that time of necessary survival from the elements and from starvation, we don't have those experiences anymore. The life threatening events, and not anymore, but not in the same capacity, right? We don't have as many of those life threatening events as they had in the past. But our brain has not gotten the memo about that, right? So even though our threats to survival are now very minimal, our brain just hasn't caught up with that information. And so we've evolved as a society to where we don't have to worry about dying from, strep throat or from a ingrown toenail infection, like all the different things they had to worry about in the past that they could die from. We don't have to worry about that, right? But our brain and our ability to process through emotions in a modern world has not caught up with that advancement in medicine and all the different things we've advanced in. We haven't advanced along the way as much as we should have. Okay. So, despite having way less cause for concern, our brain now reacts to something like someone cutting us off in traffic, an argument or a disagreement with a friend or whoever, or even an upcoming work deadline or school deadline. It reacts to all of those like they're life threatening. All right. And it's funny because even when I was preparing this and grabbing the pictures, I grabbed the picture of the car and I was looking for, traffic, whatever. And just looking at the picture of the vehicles, and I was looking at quite a few, so it was really in my face. But even the one right here, I automatically felt like, oh, like it's that dread of being in that traffic and having that experience, and that it really is my brain telling me that, yeah, that's scary, that's dangerous, like avoid that, right? And so our brain treats those things like they could be life threatening. um, and more things besides this. I mean, it can be something like sometimes certain individuals, when the phone rings, all of a sudden their brain goes into like, oh my gosh, we could die. And again, not everybody's like that, but there are people who have that stress response over even the smallest thing like that. And it's the brain thinking that we really are having our life threatened. All right. The problem with this is it's leaving our survival instincts stuck on. Okay. They're stuck on. Does that matter? Yes, it definitely does. The survival instinct is so valuable, but it was never meant to be activated with so much frequency. It was never meant to go off all day long, every day, over the little things in our lives. Maybe it's, a negative comment that we see online, or a text that someone sends to us, or we hear about something happening, or whatever it is. Again, the traffic, the disagreement, someone rude at the grocery store. It keeps going on for all these little types of things that are the issues that we face in our modern world. But it's not meant to be on like that. It's not meant to continue. And the reason being, and you can kind of see in this graphic, and cortisol is not the only thing, but there are chemical responses happening with the stress response. And that's a lot of detail I won't go into. I won't bore you. I love this stuff, but I won't bore you. But a chemical response occurs in our bodies and our brains whenever we go into that survival mode, whenever we have that survival instinct. And those hormones in that capacity and that amount are not healthy for us. And it really is taking a toll on our brain and body and on our society. It's part of the increase in cases of anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, addiction, abuse, depression, chronic illness, and so much more. Any other really mental or health challenge that we're facing currently is being advanced, is being made worse. We're seeing more and more of it, partly because of the effects of the stress response being so frequent in our day to day lives. My message is, although some of this sounds like doomsday, like, oh, well, great, my brain isn't designed for that. It's just not going to happen. And yes, I saw the stats about, anxiety or depression. I saw the stats about teen suicide, right? It can be a little bit discouraging. But the truth is, it really does not have to be. And that is my message coming as someone who has experienced depression and those types of things. It really does not have to be. It is okay because we can learn the skill set that can help overcome this and put it at bay. And it's never too late to learn, never too late to learn the skill of emotional health. And not only is it not too late and would it be good to learn, but it is absolutely necessary if you would like to not just survive in your life, but actually thrive. Actually, there's more, you're meant to be more, you're meant to respond better or have more peace or accomplish more, whatever it is. Yes, you are, but you need improved emotional health to be able to accomplish that. And so again, it's a skill set and you can not only learn it, and this is what I love, it's not just about you even. You get to learn it, but then you get to model it and you get to pass it down to future generations. What better legacy could there be, really? Emotional health is not contained in a box. It's not in a vacuum. It's not just going to affect you. It will always seep out into the world around you, into the individuals around you, and you will be passing along these emotional health skills. The way you react to a difficult situation or to a hard challenge or whatever it is, it will be observed and it will be learned to some degree and it will be carried on. I love that because probably of the fact that, my family didn't know that emotional health was important or how to be emotional healthy. That wasn't really something passed on and to no fault of anyone. But how I would love that, to have been part of our family legacy is that we have these emotional health skills. All right. Of course, it's not just about your family even. I mean, we're genuinely interacting with the world every day. We're changing the world when we are an emotionally healthy person. Okay, so let's get pointed in the right direction. All right. So I want to take 1 second or 1 minute to kind of point something out. I'm using the term emotional health, and that's what I use a lot. I consider myself an emotional health coach. Um, but there's also the term mental health, and maybe you're wondering what's the difference? Is there a difference? And in some ways, no. In some ways, there really isn't a difference. You could use those terms interchangeably in many circumstances in many different ways, right? I like to distinguish them. And you'll see it different from different sources. Sometimes it's distinguished, sometimes it's used interchangeably. I like to distinguish it, and here is why. Well, there's two reasons. First of all, mental health has taken on a negative connotation in our society, right? It's kind of like ooh, I don't want to talk about mental health, or ooh, somebody that has mental health is, whatever it is. So that's reason number one. So because I want the message out there, maybe it's softening it a little bit for people who would otherwise react differently, who would be standoffish if the term was mental health. But also, I do this because What I have learned through experience is that a person can have mental health challenges, they can have a mental health condition like I do, right? But still have amazing emotional health. Okay. So they can have mental health challenges, but they can have incredible emotional health skills. So that's why I like to separate it, because we don't need to think that if we have a mental health challenge, like then we're just an emotional mess and we're just doomed for that throughout our lives. Or we don't need to assume that about others because it's just not true. You can have the mental health challenges, but you can overcome a lot of them, a lot of it, not all. You're not going to fix it with emotional health skills. You're not going to completely cure it, but you can overcome so much of it and so much of the negative part of it with emotional health, with good emotional health. All right. So I just like to point that out real quick. So again, we're just doing an intro today. We're going to keep it brief, but I do want to at least start in a little bit to the first skill technically, the first topic. So it's time to lay the groundwork, the foundation. And I consider all the skills that I will offer you in this webinar series to be the part of that foundation. They make up the foundation. Um, I can go beyond them. There's so many other things, right, that we could learn and coach on, but these are the things that people have to know, that they need to know if they want to have optimum emotional health. So I consider this the foundation, the groundwork, and it starts with our brains, right? And I'm fascinated with the brain. I know not everybody is, and I do not claim to be a brain expert by any means, but I'm just really fascinated. I love to learn about it. I love to read about it, and it's probably partly because I'm kind of a why person. Like, well, why? Why is that? And so I like to really understand things. And so when I was, searching for answers for my own emotional health, mental health challenges, and I started learning these things and how much the brain interacts with our emotional health and clearly mental health, it's the brain, but we still separate it. We don't usually think, oh yeah, okay, what about the brain is leading to this? And so when I realized that there was so much of a connection, I wanted to understand it. I wanted to learn it. And so I love diving in and understanding how the brain works at a very tiny level. And so I will share it with you pretty much at a third grade level, because I don't understand it much more than that. So a lot of what I will teach will be generalized, of course, right? But I just love the brain. In fact, I have a little brain that is always in my office that I keep on right behind me on my dresser back there, just because I want to always remember that all of this starts in the brain. And our brains are amazing, right? Um, but they cause us problems too. I love my brain, but I have learned to recognize the challenges that it causes as well. And that's really important. That's why we start with this. We kind of discussed this, but as human beings in our world, we're pretty bad at dealing with our emotional lives. Okay. We're not really great at it. Some people you see and you're like, wow, that's incredible. And again, there are some factors that do factor in and whatever it is, maybe it was kind of learned and passed down, but for the most part, we're not good at it. And you can see that immediately if you go if you watch the news, but that's depressing. And of course they're highlighting the worst, but going online even and reading about what's happening in the world or people's struggles or how people are behaving, how schools are, all these different things, there's evidence all around us at how poor we are as a society at dealing with emotional health and in our emotional lives, because that is at the root of all those challenges and all those things that's going on. All right. And this is in large part because we don't understand how our brains work. And this is why I love the brain. It changes everything. Um, uh, oh, there was something I was going to add in there and I can't remember it now. Oh, I think everyone pretty much knows this, but do we really take the time to stop and consider that our brains are the control center of everything? Everything we do, everything about us, the brain is controlling it all. It's the control center. So it's so interesting that we will take the time to learn all about different parts of the body, different muscle groups, all kinds of things, especially when it relates to aesthetic health, or aesthetic appearance and body. But we want to understand so many different things. But most of us do not take the time to understand the control center of everything we are, which is our brain. Okay. Um, we sometimes do hear a little bit about the brain, like we'll hear about brain food, brain supplements, brain games, brain injuries. We definitely hear about that. Brain scans, that's kind of been an interesting thing the last couple decades. So we hear about the brain, like those types of high level things, but not really about how the brain works and how it affects us on a day to day basis. And of course, we do know that our brain helps us learn and it helps us remember. Like we all know that, right? We're taught that as young children, and that is true. And it's important. Okay. But there's something very important about the brain that we don't understand and that we just haven't taken the time to understand. Maybe nobody thought it was significant enough to know, but it really is. It's very important. And that is, we're mostly under the impression, I just assumed that our brain is pretty much all good, that it knows best. It's my brain, of course, it should know best. It has our best interest in mind. Like, again, it's my brain. Of course, it wants what's best for me. It wants, all these things and is focused on our highest potential. I don't know about you, but I just kind of assumed those things, starting as a kid and growing up. Yeah, my brain is like really knows what it's doing. I should listen to my brain. It knows what it's doing. But the truth is that's false. It's just not true. And we're going to go into that a little bit. What our brain does think about, what it does want to do, and we already touched on this, is survive. It doesn't need us to thrive in life. It doesn't need us to make choices that will be kind of help us be more fulfilled and help us have better relationship. It just needs us to live through the day. Okay. And again, I'm not going to go into detail about the parts of the brain today, but when I'm talking about the brain today, I'm really talking about our primitive brain. But it is the part that is usually leading us, and mostly because we don't know any different, that we don't realize it is. We think that we're leading our own lives. Well, the truth is, our primitive brain is often leading our life, and all it's thinking about is survival. And that might seem like, well, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't affect my day to day survival. So why would my brain be that influential? Well, it really is. And partly because since it's not concerned with the emotional health, it is concerned with survival. And that equates to things like conserving energy. These are its priorities: conserving energy, not doing anything new because that's not been tested. We don't know what could happen. Not doing anything risky. All right. And remember, it equates old risks that were true risks to like all kinds of things now. So, speaking in public, that's risky, right? Going to a course, maybe a painting class that you don't really know what it's about, that's risky. Okay. Partly because it's something new, which is the point right before that. So many things are risky to our brain. And so if you're wondering why you get anxious about things, why you don't want to do certain things, why you worry, it's because your brain is designed to keep you safe, and it thinks it's keeping you safe if it keeps you from doing anything that it hasn't done before, that it hasn't tested and decided is a safe thing to do. Right? And it doesn't want you to think new thoughts. It's very comfortable doing the same things it's always been doing, thinking the same things it's always been thinking, not doing anything outside of the comfort zone for sure, because that could be deadly. And of course, the not thinking new thoughts has to do also with conserving energy. It takes energy. It takes effort. If you've ever tried to really like change your mindset about something, that takes energy. It really does. And our brain doesn't want to expend energy unless it absolutely has to. So if you ever wondered why it's hard to get up and go out and exercise or, all these different things, well, it's because your brain thinks it's keeping you alive by pushing against that, by pushing against you in your desires to make better choices and to do things that are optimal for yourself instead of just a survival mechanism. Okay. So that, yeah. That's pretty much all we're going to go into today. And the reason is, and I'm only keeping this to about 30 minutes, the reason is because I don't like to give too much information, not because I don't want to share all of it, I do, but because we need time to process it. We think it seems so obvious, maybe like, oh, yeah, of course. But the truth is, deep down, it's really not to most of us. And so we just need to take the time to process it and not take in too much at once. So I will always break these down into smaller pieces. Now, we will go a little bit longer next time when we are learning more about the brain, a little bit more. Don't worry. I'm not going to take you deep into the brain to where it's like too much. Just a little bit, just enough to understand what's going on in there and why you need to know these things and why it's important. And then we will shift from brain, because it goes hand in hand, to becoming the watcher, which, so those are our two top, not top, like more important, but first skills. Learning a little bit about the brain, and then with that knowledge, becoming the watcher. And you're kind of becoming the watcher of your brain. That's sort of what that's about. But we will go very much more into detail on that next time. So I just wanted to end with this information right here. I will definitely be sending out a recording of this first introductory meeting through the emails that I send out. I'll probably cut out that beginning part. Maybe I won't. We'll see. Where we couldn't get anything working. So for those of you who were on from the beginning, thank you so much for your patience and for your understanding. I promise I tested it all out, but it still didn't work, and that's life. It's interesting. Before I jump off, when you start watching for it, and that's part of becoming the watcher that we'll talk about next week, you see these things in so many areas of your life. You're like, oh, yes, that I see that happening there. And it's so good to have that awareness. And again, that will be next week. But just a couple of silly examples. Like even today, this experience of being all set to go already, like I like to have things planned out. I'm sure most of you are the same way. And getting on and nothing's working. And I could feel that stress response going on inside of me. And it is my brain telling me, oh no, this is dangerous. We could die. That's how strong those feelings are. We don't realize that that's what's happening. And the truth is, does it really matter that much? No. It's just technology. It's just a slideshow. I could have rescheduled. I could have all the different things. Most people would have been very understanding and very patient. But my brain immediately goes to, this is bad. All right. And then I have to share the one other example, more just for fun. But I was working last night, kind of late, because we do too many things. Again, coaching is what I love to do the most. But I was working kind of late out in the other room, and I look over, and there's this little creature crawling across my carpet. And immediately my heart just jumped. And then I realized what it was. And it was a scorpion, a live scorpion about that big with its its limbs on my carpet. And looking back, in fact, right after it happened, I looked back and I thought, that's ridiculous. Why did you freak out? But I did freak out. And I'm not someone who is scared of snakes or spiders or anything like that, generally speaking. But seeing that live scorpion in my house, I definitely went into survival mode. And you probably have had this experience maybe with a creature or something where you just, oh my goodness. So I mean, I'm jumping off the couch, I'm trying to get away from it. I'm grabbing something to get it. Anyway, so I won't, well, maybe I will. Let's just say it ended with a big wooden spoon, but I'll leave it at that. But I had to stop and think, oh my gosh, that is so funny. It's ridiculous, really, is what it is. We are talking about a creature this big, which sounds big, but compared to the size that I am, it's nothing, right? And it's a creature that in the past could have caused my death, right? Scorpions, in fact, I even had to look this up just to confirm later. And I learned that most scorpions really don't pose any danger to humans. There are types that do, and we do have some of those types down here in southern Utah, not necessarily in our county. But even those, if we were bitten by one of those, as long as we have access to healthcare, we'd be fine. It's not a big risk. And I knew that last night too. Like I looked it up to really understand it, but I knew that last night. But my brain reacted like I was in mortal danger, right? It was not logical at all. It reacted that way. And the reason it did it is because it's designed to. It's designed to. And in the past, that was very dangerous. If it was a poisonous scorpion, there was probably no healthcare close by available to do anything about it. In fact, even if there was like a medical clinic or whoever the doctor would have been for the time, they wouldn't have known what to do. They wouldn't have had the antivenom. So it was dangerous, but it just shows how our brain has not evolved necessarily. In some ways, it really has when it comes to knowledge and things like that. But when it comes to the stress response and to emotional health, it's still kind of stuck back in thinking that we're constantly on the verge of death and the end of our survival. And it really affects every aspect of our lives. It's a silly example, a scorpion. It's a silly example. Well, not as silly, but my slides today, not like a really important example. But it's doing this to us all day, every day. And sometimes, because of us not knowing this and just responding or reacting instead of stopping and asking ourselves questions and stuff, and again, we'll learn about more about that next week, it's causing us a lot of problems, causing us problems in relationships and like all the other things we looked at, anxiety, depression, all kinds of things. And it's just because we need to learn to understand it and we need to know how to deal with it. And there are tools and there are skills involved in doing this. And I just want to end by guaranteeing you that although these skills might seem simple, they are so impactful. And by taking the time to learn them, which you are today, and you're planning to do ongoing, you genuinely will improve your life so much. We make life way too hard on ourselves, and it doesn't need to be. If we have the emotional skills, we can live so much freer. And does that mean we're going to be happy all the time? No, we're not meant to be. And that will be a later topic. We're not meant to be, but we will live better. We'll live more of who we're supposed to be. We'll live freer, more peace, more calm in our lives because we've learned to manage our brains essentially. And we've learned the skills that we need to do that and the awareness that we need to do that. Okay. So anyway, keep an eye out for the email. It will have the webinar recording. Hopefully, let's hope it actually worked. I will also always send out a PDF document of the slides, not every single one, but of the main slides for anyone who wishes to like look it over and review it. You don't have to. I am very much a coach that if you want to really dig deep and you want to do homework and things like that, great. But if that you're not there or you don't have the time or whatever, that's fine too. You will benefit regardless. You will benefit regardless. And then in that email, I will also put in the day and time for next week's webinar. We are going to jump around a little bit in the beginning and pick different times that could work different for different people based on the survey results. We might settle on a time and just stick with it after a few weeks, but I will definitely keep everybody posted about that. So anyway, thank you for joining. My goal in life is to teach as many people as possible how to master emotional health so they can just live better lives. I wish it was something that was there for my mother when I was a child. She could have used it so much. Would it have, again, cured or fixed her mental illness? No, not completely, but it would have made such a difference. And that's why I do this. And I've felt it and experienced it in my own life, and I've seen it happen in so many others. And so I am excited to do this with you. And I will send that email out, and I will see you all next week. Thanks, guys.